Hey everyone, today we have a special guest joining us, Anon Yarbrough, whom we've given the title All-Star Estimator. Hey Anon.
Hey Derek, how you doing?
Good, good. Glad you're here. I'll let Brian in a minute dive into why we've given Anon the title All-Star Estimator, but Anon's here to share some of his experiences and observations um, that he brings through his thousands of electrical estimates that he's worked on in his past. So I wanted to mention first, before I hand it over to Brian, if you have any questions or comments, if you're on YouTube, on our YouTube Live, there's a chat channel over on the right. And as long as you're logged in with your Google account, then you can participate in there, and we'll be picking up on those questions and bringing them up during the webinar. Um, and also, don't forget to like this video, please, and subscribe to us. It helps us get in front of more people that are interested in our content, and that helps us. And it also allows you to get alerts when we have new content coming out. So please do that. All right, Brian, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Derek. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, as Derek was saying, Anon is an all-star estimator. I've been working with Anon now for, I'm thinking, close to 20 years. And if you don't know, I have in addition to my main duties, which are my main activities, which are doing training for all the Vision customers on EBM and on PlanSwift. I also have a side business where we do estimating, and Anon does the bulk of the estimating for us. I do a few of the small, medium-sized job, but he does the bulk of them. And it shared something with me last week when we were preparing for the webinar. I didn't really have a guess, but he actually does over 500 estimates a year, somewhere between 500 and 1,000 estimates a year. Now, some of those are small, $30,000-$40,000 jobs. Some of those are $1 million jobs and more. So he is by far the most prolific, efficient estimator I've worked with. And I've worked with thousands of estimators over the years. So we thought it would be good just to spend a few minutes with him, getting some of his input, his tips, his challenges and things with the whole world of electrical estimating, because he is the best of the best. Our first topic here is the quality of the drawings. I know that's always a challenge for electrical estimators. And our question for Anon is, do you think the drawings are getting better or worse?
When I first started estimating, they were really good. They're really detailed. It seems like as the years go by, and really, I think it's really the quality or the quantity of drawings that these engineers are having to put out. My feeling is that they're taking a lot of shortcuts. I mean, for instance,
Eric, the audio is breaking up at my end. Is it yours?
Sorry, Anon, 1 second. Yeah, I messed with your mic volume, Anon, and all of a sudden we got feedback. Hold on 1 second. All right, I think that fixed it.
Is that better?
No, it's not, unfortunately. It's when you talk.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about scratchy, though.
Is that better?
Look at
no. Yeah, why is your channel giving static? It was fine. I shouldn't have touched it. Sorry, everyone. A little technical difficulty here. I'm trying to think.
I'm getting static when you talk, too.
Okay, that's not
just
good.
Kind of there in general. It's not even necessarily when you talk.
All right, give us 1 second, everyone. Sorry about that. I'm trying to think.
The audio was rough, yeah. I don't think it was right at the beginning.
Sorry. All right. It seems
that's better.
Yeah, it's because Anon's not here. Hey, Anon.
Is that better?
Anon, can you drop out? Can you drop out and reconnect with that link? All right, Brian. It's you and me now.
Okay.
Sorry about that,
Actually,
everyone.
I'll share one of the comments that Anon had right before we started the webinar on the quality of the drawings. And one of the things he said was sometimes the engineers won't even put the circuit numbers on the drawings. They'll only put them on the panel schedule or somewhere else. That just makes it that much harder for the estimator.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I was just telling them the story that you mentioned before the webinar about how the engineers, do the least amount of work they can sometimes, and they just put the circuit numbers on the panel schedules rather than somewhere else where the estimator can find the circuits and all that for the takeoff.
Yeah, basically, I mean, back when I used to do it by hand, they were really good. Everything was very detailed. The notes were very good. There was hardly anything missed or hidden. What I see now is a lot of hidden notes back and forth between all MEP drawings. And this morning I'm working on a job that basically is shows lights, receptacles, it shows disconnects, but nothing identifying where they are, where they need to go, and a big old note that says refer to the panel schedules
Right.
on this sheet for each floor for lighting, power, equipment, and circuit destination. So um, my guess is that these guys are just pumping these things out and they don't have the time to do a thorough job anymore.
Do you think that varies by the type of work? Do you find that, institutional jobs are better or worse than commercial or industrial,
No,
or is
I
it
think
pretty much all
I
the same?
really find that it's based really on the engineer. So based on the amount of jobs, certain engineers are very detailed and certain engineers have their way of doing things. And this guy, I've actually worked on his projects for over 20 years, and it seems to get worse and worse and worse as the years go by.
Yeah. All right. So one of the big changes, obviously, in the whole world of all estimating, but especially with electrical estimating, is the electronic takeoff. And maybe you just want to tell us your experience with coming from the days before electronic takeoff into the current.
Oh yeah, I used to have a desk that was as big as a room basically, and I would have or actually probably two different desks, one for the plans and one for where my computer was set up, where I would do all the basically input. So I would go in there with a clicker and a highlighter and a pen and write stuff down, click stuff off, and basically that was basically it. And for me, um, I think about 15 years ago, um, one of the first companies that came out was On-Screen Takeoff for On-Screen Takeoff, and I started using that, and it was amazing to have it just on my screen. I can basically shrink my desk size. I can take my laptop anywhere I wanted to go and basically work. So um, the impact of electronic takeoff has been, I guess, one word, more freedom, and less taking up space of office space. But in return, I think the other problem is that I find is that um, the engineers and architects are leaving everything at full DPI, which is creating tremendous amount of hard drive space usage and some lag time on being able to send plants back and forth. So having to use off programs that will compact that size um, is necessary.
Do you use 2 or 3 or more screens?
I actually right now I'm down to 2. I used to have 3, but I'm down to 2. Because for me, what it is, I like to have my notes on one screen because the biggest pitfall for on-screen takeoff is that you zoom in and then you lose all your notes that are on the sides of the plans. So to be able to have two screens going at once one for your notes to be able to reference quick and easy, the other as you're just doing the takeoff, you can just keep your flow up. So
Right. I think that's the thing that people don't realize. It's nice to have 2 screens just for the takeoff part of it, because you may want another screen that shows your notes or a schedule or detail, and that way you don't have to, when you're doing the takeoff, switch off of that and go back. It really helps
Correct.
to have the extra
And
monitor.
and with the engineers and the way they do these things, the panel schedules will show actually conduit size, they'll show
Yep.
wire size. So when you're running your branch feeders and your home runs, you've got to be able to reference those as
Quickly.
well to make sure that you're including everything, or you're going to take a big hit if you get this job.
All right. Now, why did there we go. So one of the things I just wanted to touch on briefly was the changes that have come into the electrical world with technology. The three areas that I see the most additional impact is on the EV infrastructure that comes up now. Lighting controls have been around for a while, but they're just getting more and more elaborate and sophisticated. And the whole solar world, even commercial and residential, but especially for most of our customers, it's the commercial world. There's a lot of stuff that goes in to the electrical design that is related to the solar. So, what are your thoughts on that, Anon?
EV is starting to become really popular. I mean, just about every building that I've estimated in the last year has provisions for electrical vehicle chargers. The problem is the engineers right now that I'm finding that they don't really spec those things out, so they almost always turn into an allowance number to provide the chargers themselves. What I'm also finding in a lot of stuff that I'm bidding is they provide power, but they're not providing low voltage for the control of these EV chargers in case they do want to start charging the user for the use of the EV charger. So a lot of engineers are starting to provide low voltage. So that's one thing to look out for those as well. Lighting control's been around for a while, and I think we've got it down to a science. At least I do, to quickly try to get those things taken off and then put it in EBM and give the end user or my contractors a fair labor and material rate to install the lighting controls.
Are you seeing a lot of infrastructure for solar on commercial too, or is that
for me? I don't do any solar takeoff, but we do a lot of times. We basically will take it from the main switch gear to a disconnect and leave it there, and then usually the other guys will take it. The solar guys will take it from there. So I have one contractor that primarily does that, and he's been doing that in Central California.
Yep. Cool. I know this is always a challenge, is the time constraints. How do you handle the time constraints? I know you've gotten pretty what's the word I'm looking for? We tell the customers right up front what amount of time we need to do an estimate, and it's always they need it tomorrow or yesterday or that kind of thing. But
yeah, I mean, normally I can pump out jobs pretty quickly, but the thing is, it's not about how fast I can do them. It's really about giving your vendors the amount of time for them to get your quotes back. It's almost right now a requirement to get your lighting counts and your lighting device counts to your vendors at least 5 days prior to your bid. So that's why I automatically always ask for at least 5 days, because I need that time to be able to get the counts in, send them off, and then that way you can take it, or the end user can take it and send it to their wholesale houses, because the manufacturers are now requiring more time. It used to be back in the day that the wholesale houses and the manufacturers can price these jobs up very quickly, but they're not being able to do that, especially with so many different manufacturers and specs and all that stuff when it comes to lighting.
I was working with a customer just recently. Actually, they think they did the original bid about a month ago, but now they're getting into the issues of delivery with the switchgear, and so now they're going back and forth between a couple, maybe 2 or 3 different suppliers and 2 or 3 different manufacturers as far as the delivery schedule, because some of them were looking at a year out for delivery,
Yeah.
um, and then if they want quicker delivery, that might or might not affect the price. So there was a lot of juggling of that part of the job, totally after the fact. But
Yeah.
it's
So what I'm seeing right now, and I think the time leads or the lead times for gear is getting a little bit better. But originally,
Yep.
I think in the beginning of the year, we're about a year out, and they were also in the prices that we're getting back. We're giving you an accelerated price, which was like an adder of like $60,000 to $100,000.
Yeah, that's what we were finding on this job too. They were saying, well, if you do want it faster, you got to commit, and it's going to be a surcharge if you don't, if you wait.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, time constraints are definitely a challenge, and
But the other trend is that a lot of the TIs that I'm working on right now, they're reusing existing gear because of that fact.
the other thing I've found too is that if you order the gear or the panel separate from the breakers, you can get a quicker delivery. That's more labor for the contractor because now they got to physically install the breakers. But if you got a bunch of panels and you've got it's a big labor factor to put 40 breakers into a panel. But if you can get it quicker, then that's sometimes the choice.
True.
What are some of your red flags? What are the things you just kind of always watch out for when you're doing a takeoff?
I think one of the biggest things is for me is to zoom out on the plans to make sure that I'm reading through the notes. We said it before, have another screen so that you can have your notes, your panel schedules, your fixture schedules, anything like that on a screen so that you can go back and forth and double check things as you're taking things off. The biggest thing for me is always reviewing the panel schedules to see if they actually have conduit and wire sizes, because that's going to change the bid, because I can't just assume that everything's going to be ran with number 12 wire. A lot of the engineers are using you can only run number 12 up to 100 feet, and everything after that's number 10 up. And then after that, I think up to like 175 feet, you got to run number 8. So, or the biggest one that I've seen too is that if you're combining circuits, you're going to need multiple neutrals. So that's starting to become a trend. So you got to watch the notes. Make sure you're cognizant of all the slashes on your home runs. Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of tricky things out there that the engineers are hiding, and just got to be aware of those.
So your biggest red flag is the notes that can bite you, huh?
Yeah.
All right. How do you figure non-productive labor into your estimates? What's your approach there?
Primarily on a basic job, I'm always adding at least 10%. Just because you're going to have those guys that are going to go back and forth to get this and get that. They're going to forget this connector and they're going to have to go back. So you're going to have at least 10% loss. It depends on the job. If it's multi-level, then I do add a labor factor for multi-level jobs. And then I also kind of leave it up to the contractor to let me know if there's any special needs for this job that I need to figure in, or let him know that, hey, I let this out, but if you think that you need more for this job, feel free to add, or just let me know what I need to do. Because one thing is I'm not there. I'm not able to walk the job. I can't see specific restrictions or how the job's supposed to be, what is going into the job. So that way, I kind of leave it up to my end user or my client that that he's responsible for non-productive labor. But I always add at least 10% off the top.
One of the stories I always like to tell people about is the estimate we did for just for the fire alarm on the new, well, it's now completed, the Sci-Fi Stadium in LA. And I think when it all came to the end, we had more hours for non-productive labor than the actual installation. There were off-site storage, there were safety meetings every week, there were exercise meetings, there were just all kinds of things that came into play. And by the time we were done, there were more hours for non-productive labor, and that's something you can't teach an estimator. It takes somebody with your kind of experience and knowledge, but it can be a big factor.
Yeah, but in that case, that took a collaboration between not just me but also the electrical contractor,
right,
and the site, because we had to take all those things in account to
multi-story.
You got 500 feet or 700 feet to go get your material, and if you weren't efficient enough to get everything, there's loss of labor there.
Yeah. Plus, it was multi-story too. I think they had seven levels to that. So yeah, that was an interesting bid. That
was a fun bid.
Yeah.
Hey Brian, you want to pause for a second to address some questions? It seems like our question stream in Restream's not working, so I jumped over to YouTube.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen any pop up in there for a while. Go ahead.
All right. Let me see here. Going back here, I like Andrew threw out early. He said, tip number 1, have bid on time. And he also added, or put equipment and schedule only and nothing on floor plans when it comes to the difficulty of how plans are changing. Put equipment on schedule only and nothing on the floor plans.
Yeah, those are very frustrating.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Someone asked about whether everyone feels like GPU or CPU would be better for when things are lagging, what to improve. And I threw back at him that the CPU, GPU, unless Bluebeam, because someone else referenced Bluebeam, I think it was the same person, James, uses the GPU more. I'm fairly certain with our software.
Know what GPU is, Derek.
GPU, like an NVIDIA gaming GPU, AMD's Radeon or whatever they're called now.
That's
GPUs, video graphics processor unit.
Okay.
AutoCAD uses it. If you're using AutoCAD, a GPU comes in handy. But for the most part, for estimating, it won't. Can't hurt to have one, but I'd spend more money on the CPU and the storage, making sure you're using an SSD.
Right.
The newer storage is so much faster, and most all computers come with that now, unless you get a cheaper computer. Just stay away from anything that says HD or HDD. I think hard drive.
Right.
Disk. It's SD, right? Solid state drive is what you want. Yeah. There's different qualities of those, but as long as you get an SSD, it'll make a big difference with estimating.
Yeah, and the bigger the hard drive you can get, I'm currently running a Dell, and my GPU is a GeForce RTX 3050, and I've got the Intel Core i7. And I've got as much RAM as I can possibly get in there. So, and it seems to be running well for a lot of these really large files that we have to deal with. And that is my biggest complaint. Is there's no reason for us to have huge DPIs on these drawings, because just doesn't make sense. Doesn't really, it does really no good to have these huge DPIs, and I don't understand why architects and engineers kind of just leave it that way. But and it seems to be a trend. Back when they first started doing PDFs, everything was at maybe 1200, maybe 600, and that was just enough. So, and it kept the files small. But I'm seeing these files for like 10 pages of electrical, just amazingly huge, and it's just taking up drive space. So biggest thing for me is make sure you got enough hard drive space, or you got some other external drive that can handle some of your work. So
Yeah, excellent. And Andrew commented that something similar, that to drop the JPEGs, reducing their file size is what he finds helps the most. And we've got a question here: which software works best for doing a design build project? We get a lot of projects with blank floor plans and have to design our own system. I'm sure, Brian, you could add to this. I know PlanSwift, we've added electrical symbols to the PlanSwift library that are our symbols for our customers. And you can do basic design build with that. If you want to get elaborate, then I'm sure there's other systems out there that can handle it better than that.
I primarily use whatever I have, and I do work off PlanSwift at the moment. And so basically, with the experience and the amount of work that I've done, I can go and spot and dot lights and receptacles and telephone and data outlets. As long as I have a decent scope of work to deal with, what is it that they want for square foots of lights? I can go into an office building and look at offices and put 3 receptacles, couple, teledata outlets, make sure there's enough lighting in there, whatever they're going to use, 2x4s or 2x2s, and then really come up with a decent design build off of PlanSwift in that manner. I've done that many times, or I have enough data where I can come up with square foot prices for a lot of these builds that we've got going on.
All right. Excellent. And we just got a comment from someone named, I'll take this name. Just warning that keep in mind that external drives oftentimes don't have the same lifespan as an internal drive. They tend to put cheaper drives in external drives, not always, cheaper hard drives. And that also, oftentimes when you get an external drive, it's going to be a spinning magnetic drive, the old HDD drive, as opposed to the SSD drive. Yeah, you could get them. You could get the little SSD drives. You could tell just by how small they are.
Right.
And that actually might go against this person's comment, because SSDs have a pretty decent life until they don't. But because they'll just die all of a sudden, as compared to sometimes you get a warning with the old drives. But they'll last. Just get a decent one if you're out there shopping for the SSD yourself, instead of it just coming with your computer. The slightly more expensive ones have longer lifespans. I forget what the term is, but there's a number of hours, like 20,000, 50,000, almost like an LED light bulb, how long they're supposed to last. And the hours are like years of time, really, when it comes to how much the drive is used.
We ready to move on, or do you have any other questions?
There's a few more here. As the owner, how do I capture my time spent? Office personnel such as accountant, secretary, legal advisors, etc.
So they're part of the overhead.
Yeah.
That's plain and simple. Anything that the only thing that's not part of the overhead is the labor in the field. Any other, if you've got a secretary, if you've got an accountant, if you've got utility bills, and any time that's part of running the business, that's part of the overhead.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And then going back to the SSD comment, James adds that you can buy, he terms them an SSD sled. I think it's like a small structure that you can buy for like $10, $20 that you can install an SSD drive or chip or whatever they call them now into, and make your own. You could buy your own high-end SSD. I think those are called NVMe SSD, but that's starting to get into the weeds a little bit. All right, let's move on.
All right. So additional difficulty factors. You mentioned already, you look for things like multi-story. Any other labor difficulty factors that you look out for, Anon?
Not really, because it's really kind of hard for me to look at just a flat sheet of paper and not actually do a job walk. So basically, I leave it up to the contractor to let me know what needs to be added, or he can do that on his end once I give him all the files.
Counts and measurements and all that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Any tips for how to avoid major mistakes?
I think we've said it a couple times already. Double screen definitely is a necessity to be able to have your notes there, because a lot of times, and I found this out, is that an engineer will do basically the floor plan, and then they may have like a little area that they do a blow up, and that blow up might just be on that sheet. And if you do not expand out to look at everything, you can totally miss a lot of stuff. So my biggest way uh, to a main tip is make sure you look at the whole screen. Make sure you have a couple screens where you have your notes. You can look at things to reference back and forth. Things aren't as easy as they used to be. Engineers are starting not to put disconnect sizes and labeling them out. They won't even label out, like, very good ones will label out the disconnect size. They'll even let you know what wire size to run. But I'm running into a lot of guys that just don't do that. They'll give you an equipment schedule that you got to go reference. Then you got to go to the panel schedule to make sure what size wire they want. So, I mean, everything is really hidden, and you just got to be aware of all those things. So, I think one of the first things I do when I get a job is just flip through and make sure I see everything and see, hey, oh, they got equipment schedules. Okay, so that means that I got to probably reference my panel schedules to make sure I got everything correct. And the biggest frustration for me is when they split up a job, that they can easily put on one page, but they're going to blow it up to like 4 pages. And I got feeders on one page and feeders on another page, and trying to match those up is difficult. So, and time consuming. So having multiple screens is probably one of the biggest things, and having a computer that can actually handle what's going on right now. I'm updating computers probably every 2 years, because I either run out of hard drive space, or they're just not fast enough.
My biggest tip is even a little more basic, and I really stress this because I work with brand new estimators quite often, and and it's a real basic concept. You have to mark off, you have to highlight everything you're doing as you take it off.
Hmm.
If it's not marked off on the page, if it's not highlighted, then you didn't take it off, and that's the simplest way to avoid making a mistake. And the biggest mistake you can make is to miss something on the job. Um, it's not good to take it off with number 12 wire instead of number 10 wire, but if you miss it altogether, that's really a problem. So, and it's real simple. Just highlight things, whether you're highlighting it electronically, which is easy to do now with the takeoff programs, or if you're still doing manual takeoff, you got to highlight things as you
And
go.
and also too, you can also, what I like to do as well is, like, because a lot of times these engineers they'll run lighting, power, HVAC all on one page.
Yep.
So by the time you've highlighted and done your home runs, you're like, did I get all the home runs? And so what I do is I actually take the arrow, highlight that, and then run my home run. That way, if all the arrows are highlighted, at least I know I've got all the home runs done. So
Gotcha.
that's a helpful tip, because if you just go from where the arrow starts and that device is, after you're pretty much 80% done with your home runs, I guarantee you're going to miss some.
Got it.
Okay. And you also mentioned once when we were talking something about always zooming into the plan to make sure the engineer didn't hide something on the plan.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that one. I like that one.
Any specific EBM features that really help you as an estimator? I know you mentioned a couple things when we were.
I primarily like the was it adjustments on the fly, so I can go into, like, if I got a feeder wrong, or I put, maybe it's aluminum versus copper, I can go in and change that really quickly.
Let
Custom
me show that real
assemblies,
quick here.
sure.
You see the EBM screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah, what he's talking about in the audit trail, I've got a feeder here, simple feeder from this main switchboard to the panel. It's 160 feet. If I need to change anything on that feeder, it's just one click down here to the bottom to hit edit to source. And then I can change the length, I can change the size of the type of conduit, size of the type of wire. Anything I change here is just one step. And when I hit save changes, it recalculates everything on that change.
I
You
use
can
that also for like disconnects as well, because sometimes disconnects show up as general duty and they need to be heavy duty. So I make that change,
Yep.
just to make sure we have this correct pricing for a lot of the disconnects.
You're
And
about
then
to
there's
mention something else.
custom assemblies and quick
Oh,
branch.
yes.
Those
Let me show
are
custom
roles
assembly.
nice to do too.
Custom assemblies is really handy when you get multiple gang switch assemblies, because I don't care if we
Mhm.
had 2,000 or 2 million assemblies in the regular devices, you're always going to come across oddball ones. So let's say I've got a 4-gang switch assembly with some oddball combination of single pole switches and dimmers and occupancy sensors. If you click on saved assemblies here, you can just bring up a 4-gang switch outlet. Come on. There we go. And I can just change the devices. I'm going to leave the plate, the box, the bracket, and all that. Let's say I've got 2 switches, and I'll add a dimmer. You can go from a basic slide dimmer all the way down to a Lutron dimmer. Then I'll add even an occupancy sensor here. So with just a few extra clicks, you can make up your own assembly on the fly here. And you just put your quantity and hit takeoff.
Yeah, that's a nice feature. I like that one.
And what was the other one you were starting to mention?
Quick branch.
This is my favorite. And I find there's a lot of people out there, especially the people who've had EBM longer before we put the quick branch module in. It's been there a number of years. But when you go to quick branch, you've got all the regular device assemblies up here. But let's say you want to just throw in 20 feet of MC cable with a receptacle or an occupancy sensor or whatever. You just select the assembly here. And then up at the top right, you can do the wiring, the 20 feet or 15 feet or whatever length you want in cable or conduit. So if I want MC cable, and I can put in 15 feet or 20 feet or whatever I want and hit takeoff.
And I primarily use that for like hotels that have, similar suites. So I'll take off each suite by themselves and then quantify that. And then when I go in to do the takeoff, I'll take that receptacle or whatever it is and then add whatever branch that's within that room. And then that takes care of that. So that's basically what I use it for.
Okay. Let's see. I think the last topic here was if you have any particular experience with regional differences in the drawings or the estimates you're doing.
Not really. No. Engineers are engineers, and I think I'll get engineers that do East Coast and West Coast. So I mean, it's I think some of the differences on the East Coast is in the signal line. They use the different settings for switchgear. They'll use CT meters and disconnects.
Yep.
Versus West Coast are using main gear outside or inside or however it is. So those are some of the differences as far as pricing goes. The way we price things out is based off a regional price. And so I always let the guys know that, hey, this might be a little bit higher than yours. So I would just go in and look at those things and detail them out, make sure it looks good to you. because it is a regional price. It's not set up just for you or what you can buy things at.
I agree. You don't see as much of what, as a West Coast person, I used to think of as conventional switchgear, where you've got a switchboard with all the meters and all the gears all built into one unit, whether it goes inside or outside. Where I see a lot of the stuff that goes into the southeast is they just slap everything on the wall.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah. I think that's.
I got some more questions.
Okay, fire away.
All right. Justin asks, when lighting controls is not spec'd, what is the best way to bid?
Either what I would do is send an RFI to the engineer or your GC and get that clarified. Because otherwise, if it's not spec'd, I just go in and wire it just like I would normally do with switches and stuff like that. So it really needs to have the symbols and or specified with some lighting control diagrams and some specifications in order to do it that way.
All right. Sounds good. And William asks, would you recommend bidding a job that you can't physically go and look at?
I
think
think
that's
it's
a
really
lot of the time. Yeah.
it's really up to your preference. I mean, I don't get to look at these jobs, and I'm bidding a lot of jobs. So, but the electrical contractors that I do work for are able to go look and let me know if there's stuff that is out there. So, I mean, it would be a benefit to look at the job to see if there's any difficult areas within the job that need to be addressed while doing the estimate, but it can be done.
I think it also depends what kind of a job it is. If it's new job, it's pretty straightforward. If there's a lot of existing building structure and equipment and other stuff in place, then yeah, it's much better if you can look at it and get an idea how much effort it's going to be to work in the existing building and how much you're going to have to allow for those kind of difficulties. So it definitely depends on the kind of job.
Mm-hmm. All right. Rod asked, does Anon use PlanSwift auto count?
No.
I don't know anybody that does. Most people don't even know they have an auto count. It's not worth.
I've tried it a couple times, and it scares me. So whenever I feel very uncomfortable with something, I go to hand counting. It's much easier, and at least I know for a fact that what I'm counting and what I'm taking off is correct, and I don't like doing anything by automatic.
Yep. All right. And what do you think is the most cost-effective way to take off a group of receptacles far from a panel? I've mostly been doing MC to a central J box with EMT with 2 wires per circuit and a shared ground. I don't know, it's a big question.
I mean, a lot of times the engineer for me has all that stuff drawn out, so I really kind of follow their stuff. If I mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's basically how you would probably install it in the field. So estimating it that way is definitely a beneficial way to do it. I started off in the field. I worked, I think, 12 to 14 years in the field and worked my way into being an estimator. So I have a lot of field knowledge. So if you have that same knowledge, I would build it the same way and estimate it the same way.
That's good. All right. Brian, can you go ahead and go to the next slide? Other than, I just wanted to mention, while we're answering questions, be sure to subscribe to our channel. There should be a subscribe button, and to like the video.
There it is.
So you get alerts in the future. The next slide, I think, is just how to contact us, but I'm going to keep going with some of these questions. I'm still seeing the YouTube. Yeah, there you go. All right. Are there any programs that are tailored to EV installations? Which I think, go ahead.
Not that I know of. Yeah.
Not that I know of, no. I think basically a takeoff program and being able to go in and just set up an item and do your takeoff on it, set up a linear footage and label it whatever it is that needs to be done and take that off. PlanSwift is very good at doing that. Basically, you just have to go in and create a count for the EV charger and then create a linear footage for the feeder and just do your takeoff.
With Electrical Bid Manager and PlanSwift, I think is.
Yeah.
I mean, I know our customers use Electrical Bid Manager all the time for EV stuff. I think, Brian, you've talked about that.
Yeah, it's really just like doing a feeder to a panel board or a switchboard or something like that. You know, you still gotta count the actual unit, just like you'd count the panels and the disconnects and all that, and then you got to have a feeder or a circuit out to the charger.
Yeah, and tell me, I'm pretty sure I'm going down the right path, but you could add any item you want to Electrical Bid Manager and just reuse it and just make it part of your takeoffs when you're doing EV.
Yeah, and the EV charger itself is not something it's like switchgear again. The contractor's going to have to get a price on that charger.
Sure. All right. Is there a quick way to group your takeoff by division and keep those selections checked, in quotes, or some type of override to keep those selections related to the division of the EBM breakdown?
That's a pretty open-ended question. You know, EBM can break out a job as many different ways as you can imagine with the sections and breakdowns and divisions. I think we need to get
more detail.
I mean, in Audit Trail, you can I know there's what is it? You can filter or you can sort method by entry order. You can go in by phase, section, breakdown. So that way you can look at different areas as you input things in. For me, I go by entry order and kind of leave it at that. I really don't have to go in and do a sort method for that.
All right. Who was that? That was Brent that asked that. Brent, you might want to go on our website, visioninfosoft.com, and hit the support button at the top and create a support case there. And our support might be able to dive into that better with you. When using 10% for non-productive labor, is that off hours or in total? Is that off hours or in total?
Just adding to the basic number of hours.
Yeah, so I'm just adding a flat 10%.
So if EBM says it's 1,000 hours, then adding 10% would add 100 hours.
Yeah. But that's just basically what I do. It's not necessarily something. I mean, it just varies from job to job, and so for me, I put it in there just because there's always going to be some labor lost.
Maybe he's asking if it's overtime, and that's not overtime. That's a separate issue if you have to add hours for overtime because they'd be at a different rate too.
Right.
And here we have a little a fan, an Anon fan. Neil Hamilton, thank you for all the great information. A lot of really good stuff. I've personally known Anon for about 25 years. Really good guy and great estimator. So
I know Neil and his father.
He's supporting the All-Star Estimator title, I think, there.
Thanks.
Jay asks, what's the best way to do a breakout? Let's say building A and building B. Sometimes GC asks for breakouts. I can't read that word. You walk us through your process of doing it. Can you walk us through your process?
Yeah, it varies, and it's a difficult thing to do sometimes. In PlanSwift, it's not very easy to do. In OST, it was a lot easier. And so I've had to develop a different way of doing it. So basically, I've created I'll create a folder for that area, and then in that area, I'll do all the takeoff in that folder. And then when I get my report, all that stuff is in there. Now, when I input it into EBM, then I can go into
sections and breakdowns or whatever.
Yeah. And then that way, when I input it into EBM, I can go into sections and label it that way, and then input everything in from that folder from Plant Swift into there, and that kind of uses that area to break it up. So it's a very difficult thing to do, especially when, let's say, they have a breakout that involves one page and there may be different sections. Maybe they want this office part of this price and that office part of that price. So it's something that what I do is I just go in and do that first. Then I go do the other breakout. If it's on that same page, do that next. And then try to remember where those are at and do the rest, like if that's part of the base bid. So, I mean, it's a difficult thing to do. Definitely take your time in doing those things because you can really mess it up really fast. So it just takes organization within your head and kind of doing it on screen. It's a little bit difficult, but I don't know if this totally helped you. But let's say if someone wants to contact me, I could probably run you through it real quick, or at least what I do too.
One of the things that happens too is that, if they tell you ahead of time that they want to break out for building A versus building B, that's fine, or they want you to break out the site lighting, then you can create the breakdowns as you put it into EBM. If they tell you after the fact, it's much more challenging, because then you've got to pull stuff out of where you put it in and then put it into a different section, and that'll get trickier.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely getting that information at first is definitely key. Otherwise, sometimes even in Plant Swift, I'll create separate jobs just for those areas to keep it separate.
I think that's always
I can just I have that area separate, and then I can go to the next job and have that area separate. So that is a definitely great method as well.
Yeah, that never hurts just to create a separate job. That way it's really clean. It means you have to move back and forth between the jobs. If you need a total on building A and then a total on building B, and you've got a separate job, you've got to run the reports separately, but that way it's really clean.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, that sounds like something that could use some of your training time, Brian, for someone that's really trying to grasp that. All right. RL asks, what labor factor would you assign for new technology, say battery electric bus systems, for say like transit agencies that are new and do not have a defined manufacturing base? What labor factor would you assign?
For me, I think
labor column? I'm not sure
I'll
what
go
he means.
3 all day long on stuff like that.
Yeah.
Column 3. All right. And back to the breakout. Yeah, I've had them ask for breakout after the fact, and it's a total pain.
So the first advice I'd give you on that is make a copy of the job. If you're not, if you got to do it after the fact, make the copy of the job and then go back to the copy. Don't touch the original job, because if you mess up, like Anon said, you can make a big mess of things. If you're working on the copy and you mess up, you can start over. So make a copy of the job and then you can start moving stuff around. With EBM has some really nice little cut and paste. We call it copying from one breakout to another. You can do a lot of that stuff in the audit trail, but you got to be careful you don't mess it up, because it's hard to start over if you haven't got original copy. So just make a copy of the job and do the changes in the copy.
And what I find too that's easier too, going back to that, is when you have to when you do it in Plant Swift or whatever takeoff program you have, copy the job and then just do that breakout. Take delete everything out except for that area, and then that way you just have that takeoff, and then you can take that info and then separate that in EBM and have your area delineated for the breakout.
Mhm. All right. Yeah, the original person that asked, Jay, just commented, thank you. 2 different jobs is what made more sense to me too.
Mhm.
All right. Well, our questions have slowed down, so I think we're kind of at the end here. We've been here for quite some time, and thank you everyone for hanging out. We've had over 50 people here the whole time, which is a pretty good number of people. I think it might be one of our best. This video will be live and stay here, not live, but it'll be on our YouTube channel. You could rewind it now and rewatch it, I believe. So you could always come back or share it with others. We have our contact information here, our 800 number. Email us if you have any questions, or if you don't have our products or training, or you're looking for estimating, go ahead and give us an email or reach out to Brian. And of course, visit our website. So let's see. Yep, I think that winds it up here. Anna, and I just wanted to thank you again for joining us. It's been great. Good talking with you and hearing from someone with so much experience.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And you know, it's something that I've been doing for a lot of years, and I really love doing it. And if I can be of service, then I'm more, I'm happy to do it. So thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good
Anon.
day.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.